An old house, sitting empty since its owner died. It's ripe pickings, the ringleader insists. The rest of the gang takes some convincing. The plan is simple. Break in and gather up anything valuable. Cash and jewelry are the main score. Slipping in under the cover of darkness should be no trouble for a group of seasoned burglars like them, but they want to know that job will be worth it. That's when the ringleader tells them the reason he wants to hit this house in particular, because of who previously resided there. Some big-shot Hollywood cartoonist had lived there, an animator who launched some pretty well-known cartoons that each of the gang remembers from when they were kids. And so, the ringleader tells them, the cartoonist had a study where he used to do all his drawings. If they can find an original piece of his, something that the public has never seen, especially something with one of the cartoonist's famous characters, then something like that could sell for big bucks at auction. Hearing the ringleader out, one by one, the rest of the crew start to be enticed by the prospect of a big payday. All they've got to do is get into one room. Getting into the house is easy enough. The group is all dressed in full black from head to toe, including balaclavas and gloves, but the door to the study proves a little more challenging. It's not that it's locked, though, more that it's impossible for any of the burglars to get through. The ringleader heads there immediately, quietly turning the handle and slowly opening the door. Suddenly, something from inside the study grabs him and pulls him inside, the door closing behind him. As the rest of the group exchange panicked whispers and try to get the study open again, they can hear the sounds of commotion on the other side of the door. There's a scuffle, fists are flying. In fact, it sounds like a full-on brawl. They manage to pull the door open, only for the ringleader to come tumbling out as if he'd just been thrown with great force. Even in the low light, the burglars all notice something's different about him now. His outfit's changed, his dark clothing replaced by a cartoonish black and white striped top with a domino mask over his eyes and a large burlap sack over his shoulder labeled swag. Not exactly the inconspicuous look the group was going for. Another of the burglars tried opening the door a sliver, seeing if whoever had beaten up their boss was still in there. The study looked empty, so he slipped inside, only for the door to slam shut behind him. The rest of the gang try to get inside, only for a voice to whisper from the other side that they can't come in. "There's a closed set." Searching the rest of the house, after around 20 minutes, they find their missing accomplice. He's babbling incoherently about being made to answer trivia questions by some kind of duck that walked and talked like a human. He seemed to be presenting a game show, but each time the burglar answered a question, even if he was correct, the duck would subject him to a bizarre punishment. The only thing he remembers was having the Rock of Gibraltar dropped on him, then waking up in another part of the house. The ringleader checks him over for injuries, only to find an exaggeratedly large bump protruding several inches from the man's head. Determined to get in the study, the ringleader marches back over to the door and swings it open. To his surprise, a tree trunk is standing in his way, with a single sheet of paper stapled to its bark. The paper has 2 words crudely written on it: Rabbit Season. Reaching out to tear the poster away, the ringleader finds another one underneath. This one says, Duck Season. He keeps tearing away alternating posters, going back and forth between Duck Season and Rabbit Season, until he reaches one underneath all the others. This one says, Burglar Season, followed by the barrel of an old hunting rifle poking out from behind the tree. While the estate situated in Newport Beach, California may seem unassuming from the outset, there exists an anomalous secret behind its walls. Records indicate that the house and the surrounding grounds were formerly the property of the late Chuck Jones, cartoonist, painter, and animator who passed away in 2002. Since his death, the Newport Beach house fell into the possession of Jones's estate, which was subsequently bought by the SCP Foundation, using a front company to mask their activities. Following this acquisition, a 4-meter privacy fence has been installed surrounding the property, and a number of Foundation researchers remain stationed on site within the household, under the cover story that they are mourning relatives of Jones. This all begs the question, why exactly is the Foundation so interested in a deceased animator's former home? Well, technically, their interest in Chuck Jones's old house is actually confined to a single room within. Situated in the far corner of the house, down on the first floor, is a quiet little spot that Jones, while he was alive, used as a private study. He would have spent countless hours putting pencil to paper, honing his skill for creating characters with exaggerated poses and heightened facial expressions, all to convey a sense of personality to an audience. Jones was responsible for not only designing, but also creating the iconic personalities of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Porky Pig, Wile E. Coyote, the Roadrunner, Pepe Le Pew, and Marvin the Martian. But Chuck Jones's repertoire as an icon of early mainstream animation still isn't what urged the Foundation to buy his house. Jones's former study is the site of a spatially disruptive anomaly that the Foundation has designated as SCP-4934. Upon its discovery, there existed no known means of directly entering the study room without triggering the manifestation of numerous humanoid entities or causing dangerous objects and substances to appear, causing the risk of extreme bodily harm to those seeking entry to the seemingly prohibited room. Each time the door to SCP-4934 is opened, an unpredictable, entirely random anomalous effect will trigger, only ceasing once the door is closed again. Having discovered it following an incident involving an attempted break-in at Jones's former household, the Foundation decides to send out an investigation team. Heading up the team is one researcher Rex, a man who's heard every joke likening him to a dinosaur or a dog that a person could possibly stomach in a single lifetime. According to briefings provided by the SCP Foundation, the study room within the house is producing an unknown anomaly, and Rex's goal is to discover the extent of this reported reality distortion and to what extent it poses a threat. However, upon overhearing one of the investigation team snickering at his name, muttering something about throwing him a bone, haha, Rex's rationality suffers from a temporary lapse, and he walks straight for the door to the study. Opening the door to SCP-4934, researcher Rex's foot immediately steps on a rake, the force of his footfall causing the garden tool to swing upwards. The wooden handle of the rake smacks the unprepared researcher squarely in the face. Rex stands still, rake handle against his nose, foot still keeping it upright, contemplating his life for a split second, before stepping back to let the rake clatter to the floor. Without even turning around, he can feel the eyes of the rest of the investigation team on him, a few confused murmurs interspersed with quiet, barely detectable giggling. Huffing, Rex slams the door closed and storms off to collect himself without so much as looking at his fellow Foundation researchers. Once Rex returns, multiple attempts to get inside SCP-4934 come and go, each as unsuccessful as the first. Upon opening the door for the fifth time, Rex feels his pulse quicken, wincing and recoiling slightly as he twists the door handle. Opening it up, he's surprised to be greeted by nothing. He can see clearly into the study, the room standing as it was the day Chuck Jones previously set foot in there. There are no immediately observable obstacles in the way, nothing obstructing the entrance, and mercifully, no precariously placed garden tools left on the floor. From behind, Rex hears the rest of the team goading him to enter SCP-4934, and he takes a big stride toward the study, only to collide hard against a solid surface standing in his path, bashing into it with such force that he stumbles back and topples over. Landing on his back, researcher Rex rubs his dazed eyes and looks closer at the entrance to SCP-4934, only to realize that what he'd walked into was a brick wall. The entire doorway was now bricked over, with a facsimile of the study room inside painted over the surface of the bricks. 21 failed attempts to get inside SCP-4934, and Rex is starting to feel infuriated. Each time he opens the door, he braces himself for the next ridiculous thing that will come spilling out or standing in his way to not only stop him from getting inside, but, in all likelihood, injure and aggravate him further. Sure enough, on the 26th effort to enter the room, researcher Rex opens the door, only to have a row of figures barge right past him, knocking him to the floor once again. Moving to the tempo of music that seems to be emanating from inside SCP-4934, the figures are a line of can-can dancers, legs kicking outwards as they dance their way into the hallway. Each one that passes seems to accidentally kick Rex as he tries and fails to get to his feet, until they all demanifest, the one in the back shutting the door to the study behind them. On the 46th try, researcher Rex is just able to make his way past the threshold of SCP-4934, a whole step inside Chuck Jones's study. Some progress is better than none, although nearly being crushed to death hardly feels like progress. The moment that Rex makes it a single step through the doorway, a 50-kilogram anvil drops from the ceiling. The weight of such an object would normally be enough to kill a human being or, at the very least, cause someone severe cranial trauma by falling directly on their head. The rest of the investigation team collectively gasp at seeing the weighted object drop onto researcher Rex and the door to SCP-4934 slamming shut behind him. A number of them even feel a pang of guilt for making jokes about his dumb name. That feeling quickly dissipates when Rex is discovered not only alive, but having suffered no serious injuries in the basement of the house. Another 20 attempts later, and Rex is still trying to get into SCP-4934. Try number 66, and he opens the door to find another door. And opening that one reveals another, smaller door. He spends several minutes opening a series of continuously smaller doors, each one making him more and more agitated, until after 32 of them, he decides to give up on this attempt. Things don't go much better on the 75th try either, when the exhausted and infuriated researcher opens up SCP-4934, only to see the barrel of a gun staring back at him. A tall male figure, dressed in a trench coat and fedora, points a revolver directly at Rex, telling him to scram and skedaddle, while affecting a heavy, stereotypical Chicago accent. This wouldn't be the only time escalating danger occurs by trying to enter SCP-4934. The 82nd try threatens to level the entire house when, upon opening the door once again, Rex freezes in horror to realize the entire room is filled with explosives. Bright red sticks of dynamite, wrapped together in large bundles, lay scattered around the floor, all of them connected to a lit fuse, the flame creeping rapidly towards the TNT. In a panic, researcher Rex slams the door closed and yells to the rest of the Foundation team to take cover before hurling himself in a face-first dive away from the door. With a thud, he lands on the floor for what feels like the millionth time that day, covering his ears with his hands. A few silent seconds pass, smoke crawling out from underneath the door to SCP-4934, before an almighty boom rings out, shaking the entire house. Clambering back up to his feet, researcher Rex is amazed to the point of being stricken with insane laughter to see that the door to the study is still intact, and the room inside has no signs of blast damage whatsoever. Upon making his 96th attempt to access SCP-4934, researcher Rex is convinced that he really has gone insane after all this. Opening the door, he is greeted by yet another anomalous figure, except this one is frighteningly familiar. It's him. The humanoid entity bears an identical resemblance to Rex and mimics his movements as he tries to get past the duplicate and enter the study. Each time, he is prevented from entry by the entity performing the same movements and actions that Rex is. This mimicry lasts for around 2 minutes, at which point the duplicate abruptly kisses researcher Rex before shoving him away and slamming the door. On the verge of ripping his own hair out, Rex opens the door to the study one more time. At this point, he's expended too much effort to let this anomalous entryway best him, and has consigned himself to whatever ridiculous thing will happen next. But this time, on the 101st attempt, the door opens to reveal some red satin curtains like those someone might expect to see on a stage. Before Rex can reach out to part them, a creature bursts out from behind, its head poking out between the curtains. It seems to be some kind of porcine humanoid, walking bipedally, possessing the features of a pig, but also at least the decency to dress itself, specifically in a small tailcoat. Poking out between the curtains, the creature stammers out a single phrase before shutting the door to SCP-4934.
That's all, folks.
Following the creature's sudden disappearance, Rex is astounded to discover that after so much effort trying to get inside, he can enter the study without further issue. SCP-4934 is reclassified as neutralized, and researcher Rex is discharged on a 3-week sabbatical after a Foundation-appointed psychiatrist determines he is on the verge of a total mental breakdown. Theories as to what exactly was causing these animated anomalies to manifest at SCP-4934 range far and wide among speculating Foundation researchers. The initial explanation posited by researchers is that the animated creatures are, in actuality, a band of anomalous travelers from another universe or plane of reality, designated by some SCP Foundation personnel as SCP-4934-A, or simply known otherwise as Toon World. This theory, more widely accepted among some older members of staff, suggests that this group of interdimensional misfits was first encountered by Chuck Jones at some point in the late 30s or early 40s, and that their latent reality warping capabilities and perpetual infighting with each other inspired him to recreate the anomalous group's various hijinks in the form of animation. Some of the more overzealous SCP Foundation researchers have expanded on this theory, believing an outlandish claim that it is actually possible for human beings to cross directly into the creature's dimension of origin. At present, this dimension still remains undiscovered. There have been various excavations conducted at golf courses across the state of California, with Foundation staff bribing the owners of these courses in order to sanction these digs. The goal is to attempt to reach a supposed entry point to SCP-4934-A, which is believed to be located somewhere between the Earth's crust and the planet's molten core. The search for this entry point is ongoing and currently costing the Foundation an exorbitant amount of money in order to restore numerous destroyed golf courses. There have, at present, been no additional sightings of the creatures that protected Chuck Jones's study, on which his animated creations were presumably based. However, a proposal was submitted to SCP Foundation higher-ups and has since been approved, allowing investigative personnel to conduct a number of interviews with specific civilians. These are people who are suspected of having had encounters with the anomalous entities connected to SCP-4934, and actually include high-profile public figures from the world of professional basketball. Since announcing his retirement from the sport in 1993, the SCP Foundation has been trying to establish contact with Michael Jordan following a supposed incident believed to have involved the SCP-4934 anomalies. For a brief period, Jordan was reportedly missing from his home. During this absence, an unknown pathogen seemingly affected several other prominent players at the time, namely Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Larry Johnson, Shawn Bradley, and Tyrone Bogues, who were playing in the NBA for the Phoenix Suns. The source of this perceived outbreak remains a mystery even to the SCP Foundation. However, it seemed to function similarly among all 5 players. During a game, each one spontaneously developed issues with hand-eye coordination that severely affected their performances on the court. Medical and psychological examinations of the 5 affected players revealed nothing out of the ordinary. However, before the SCP Foundation could launch a full-scale investigation into the anomalous illness, all present symptoms seemed to be miraculously cured after Barkley, Ewing, Johnson, Bogues, and Bradley met with Michael Jordan in private. In subsequent years, all of them have refused to comment on the exact nature of this meeting or what was discussed. Those that have either only retained a vague recollection of events or seem to disclose that they still don't fully understand what happened to them. All that is known is that once Jordan had returned from his brief disappearance, the talent of these other 5 basketball players was no longer affected. The SCP Foundation is still attempting to contact Michael Jordan to discuss this incident and whether or not he interacted with the anomalies connected to SCP-4934. Research personnel have since taken to categorizing this incident, and others like it, a case of spatially peculiar anomalous converging on Earth, and have also codenamed the 1993 event as the Jordan Anomalous Meeting 1. This is often abbreviated to Space Jam 1. There are also some personnel who suspect that another incident took place more recently in 2021, this time involving widely celebrated Los Angeles Lakers player LeBron James having an eerily similar encounter with the SCP-4934 entities. This is tentatively being referred to as the James Anomalous Meeting 2, or Space Jam 2. However, there are a number of Foundation staff that vehemently deny this ever occurred. Confirmation of these suspected incidents is still being sought out by Foundation researchers. An alternative theory as to the origin of the SCP-4934 entities has been presented by a staff member. Their explanation suggests that the creatures protecting Jones's study were, in fact, creations brought to life by the illustrator's own imagination. While unsubstantiated, it has been suggested that, through anomalous means, Chuck Jones was capable of reality manipulation to some degree. If true, this seemingly did not present any clear threat to reality during his lifetime. However, the claim that Jones possessed any latent anomalous abilities, let alone the power to create sentient life, if often not very intelligent life, has been widely disputed. Numerous Foundation experts and reality warpers have closely examined a number of his original drawings and studied every episode of Looney Tunes that Chuck Jones was directly involved with. They have detected nothing anomalous about any of his work. Proponents of neither theory widely believe that the SCP-4934 entities existed separately from Jones himself and were merely protecting his home and study in the wake of his passing, eventually departing once their grieving was done and leaving SCP-4934 neutralized. In other words, that's all, folks. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-428, The Crowd.